Okay. Evening all. This evening I'm going to be checking out the Sicilian Sveshnikov. Just wait a couple of minutes, actually. Just wait a couple more minutes. Okay. Okay, good evening all. I'm going to be checking out a few games in the Sicilian Sveshnikov this evening. I hope the audio is okay on PlayChess and Twitch. So the Sicilian Sveshnikov is an interesting variation of the Sicilian that I was quite fond of. Even before I was 18, so about more than 20 years ago, I was having a look at this variation. So it starts off like this: e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6. So knight c6 is an early knight move. It's not normally seen. If you're going to play like the Najdorf, it's usually d6. So that's like the most popular variation of the Sicilian. The Najdorf is like this, so characterized by a6. But the Sicilian Sveshnikov is quite distinctive. This early knight move out here after knight f3, knight c6 is quite distinctive. And White can play quite an annoying move, kind of often termed, well, Rosalimo or anti-Sveshnikov, bishop b5. But if White wants an open Sicilian, we get to see the Sicilian Sveshnikov sometimes. So the open Sicilian, d4, c takes, knight takes, and Black now plays knight f6 to try and encourage knight c3. There's no e5 here, that knight's stopping e5, so we get knight c3, and now Black plays e5, which is important to observe. Like structurally, what's happened is that the d5 square is quite vulnerable, and this is like proper like Sveshnikov territory after knight db5. Anyway, so I was playing White last night in a Hearts League match, and my opponent was Carnation. So the Hearts League match against Watford 2, I did kick off with e4, and we got this position actually against Carnation. So I was playing straight against the Sveshnikov, playing White against the Sicilian Sveshnikov. He played now the move d6, and White usually just plays bishop g5. I played bishop g5 here, so pinning the knight. And it looks as though also a virtue of the pin, that capture could lure the queen potentially away from c7, but Black can always take with the g-pawn, so that's not really a major problem. So Black actually played a6, it's theoretical, and the knight looks as though it's a bit drunken going to a3 here, but this is all part of the plan against the Sicilian Sveshnikov, that this knight is destined for big things after this one moves. The c-pawn moves usually to c3, and the knight can swing to that d5 square, so it's destined for big things from a3. My opponent played b5, and this is all theoretical, very, very theoretical, knight d5. But there was a major branch here. Is actually, I think it's actually considered the main line move, is actually bishop takes f6. And usually Black just captures with the g-pawn, not the queen. and we get some very interesting positions. After knight d5 here, I'm not sure it's mandatory for black to play f5. I was just checking actually Vladimir Kramnik's statistics. He was quite an exponent of the Sveshnikov before he started playing the Berlin defense quite a lot. But here, bishop g7, he's played almost equally bishop g7 and f5. Anyway, I didn't want to go into this variation. It's a very interesting variation. Last night I played this. This is the more kind of positional, in a way, knight d5. And my opponent played bishop e7, and white voluntarily gives up the dark square bishop. So giving black the two bishops. But this idea of this knight on d5, to reinforce it now with c3, so this other knight can swing to that e3 square. Black castled here, and I played not to castle kingside, but knight c2, which also helps put the brakes on a b4 like move, which could have been quite annoying. So the knight's guarding b4. It also means a4 is now possible to put pressure on the queen side. And in fact, my opponent played bishop g5 here, and this is quite a standard move to get the f pawn out of the way to play f5 soon. It sort of activates quite a few of the pieces and tries to undermine the pawn chain. An interesting idea is h4 actually. If bishop takes, then I think that's bad because of queen h5, and we've got h7 under fire. So black usually plays bishop h6, and it's not such a problem. I reasoned last night, because if g4, this looks quite a menace because it stops f5, but black can just play bishop f4 and get a nice e5 square for the knight and pressure down the e file. So even if white wins a pawn here, tries to win a pawn, this is really not bad at all, I think, for black, this kind of position. If we try and win the pawn, black gets a lot of counterplay, and there's a lot of vacuum here, and pressure potentially down here, e5 square. It's not very good to do this. So anyway, I avoided the temptation of playing h4. I mean, it is sometimes played though, but not with that sort of follow-up. But h4, I didn't play it. I played on the queen side here with a4. And now quite often actually, black sometimes just takes on a4 here. Another alternative is rook b8, and also even niftier, instead of this bishop g5, given that a4 is quite a thematic move, some players play rook b8 to discourage a4 in advance, because we'll be on b2, or if it's played, it's going to be like a temporary pawn sack. You don't really want to lose b2. So there's some interesting ideas already here. Knight c2 though, he played bishop g5, and I get my a4 in. So here he's just supported. I'm threatening because of this pin. I'm threatening AB, that rook loose. So he plays rook b8, and now I take on b5. So you see that's a bit of an isolated pawn. We've got a backward pawn here. It looks as though black's structure isn't that healthy, but you've got to consider black has the bishop pair, and potentially increasing the pressure on the pieces of his pieces. With f5, I'm not entirely sure this is a great move, what I played here at move 15. I think the most standard move, actually there's a live book here, the most standard move by far is actually bishop d3 followed by bishop e2, but this move has been seen before, knight cb4. It looks tempting to try and undermine, reinforce the knights, but I think bishop d3 is actually the most common move. I'll probably play that another time if I play this. So I played knight cb4. It does avoid the potential of bishop takes e3 going through this route instead of the e3 route. He actually took on b4, knight takes b4, and play bishop b7. And I thought, should I have really gone into this Sicilian Sveshnikov? Isn't he going to just generate quite a bit of counterplay? There was a little bit of concern here about this. I support the pawn with bishop d3, and now a very active, aggressive move, f5. So he's trying to just extend the scope of that bishop, take even that pawn. I didn't really fancy this position. It looks a bit grim, actually, this position. If the rook has to move, we've got fragmented pawns. f2 is a target later. Maybe even e4 is possible here. I didn't want to go into this position. So I just supported the bishop with queen e2. And now here, you know, black, when playing the Sicilian Sveshnikov, needs to play, you know, with some dynamism and aggression. And I think a very, very interesting move for black, which one of their strongest players in Watford Chess Club, he was actually around that evening, yesterday evening, and he mentioned d5, and it can lead to very aggressive stuff. d5. If e takes, then e4, and then, you know, we're going to have e3 soon, and it's not looking that healthy here, this position. Or even d4. Black's pieces are really extending in scope, and you don't really want this as white. So my opponent in post-mortem was worried about rook d1. I'm not sure this is such a big deal. Oh, the audio is out. Are you kidding me? On Play Chess, no audio. I didn't see a notification about it dropping. Oh, sorry, if you press play or something, has anyone else got audio? Okay. Well, okay, sorry, on Twitch, while he's trying that, Johnny Walker on Playtest, can you hear audio? Any audio? Because I didn't see a note about it dropping. Any audio? Yes, there's audio on Twitch. That's a bit of a pain. Okay, right. I'm gonna have to. Okay, I think I've got a solution. Okay, I'm gonna stop and start. One moment. Okay, I'm just gonna have to stop and start this. If I stop. Oh, great fun. I'll go into the broadcast area and just check. Sometimes just checking another broadcast helps. So I'll have a look at a chairman of another broadcast, and then I don't know, for some reason it helps. Then I'll just do a new audio broadcast and try and get back to the position we're in, hopefully with audio. Carnation. And pardon me. And we'll start again. And it's minimize there. Try and get the windows back to how it was. So it was about here, the window size. How is the chessboard? I'm going to check the chessboard. I think the chessboard's back to being okay. Is board okay? And is audio okay right now? I had to just reinstate. So we've got audio. I hope we've got audio. Is the board okay on Twitch? Yes. So we had this position here with Rook D1. So sometimes these technical issues. Okay, Rook D1 in post-mortem, and so this is an idea. In the game he played F takes E4 actually, but let's have a quick look at D5. Very aggressive D5. You know, if ED, for example, bishop takes, or rather E4 is aggressive. You see, the problem with these lines is that potentially there's some counterplay for black with Queen B6. This knight might not be that relevant, and black might be pushing through with E3. So if black plays energetically, I think there's some potential here for dynamism. So black has to play energetically the Sveshnikov to make sure his position doesn't sort of lose counterplay. So this sort of thing, even though it's like sacrificing a pawn, we're trying to just liberate all the pieces, and especially make this bishop work hard. That's a board problem. No board moves, great. That's great. No board moves now. I don't know why there's no board moves. Oh dear, what a pain. This game on there's a question, was a game of mine from last night, but I've got some problems here on Play Chess. I don't know how to resolve, in fact. That's a shame. If we go back to the start position, if I played E4 here, or actually start would be good. Pressing start. God. Yes, starting would be good, and we get this position. So my opponent, audio commentary now available, and yes. Okay, so my opponent played F takes E4 here, and this suffers a bit of a problem to bishop takes E4. I want to sort of get rid of the light square bishop. Okay. So, Luigi Vampa on Play Chess, is audio and board okay? If you press play, again. So black played Rook F4. Rook F4, attacking my bishop. Board okay? So I don't mind taking off on B7, And I think a lot of the battle in the Sicilian Sveshnikov is about these two squares, d5 and e4, which might be coincidental because there's often black pawns on d6 and e5. But I've often thought intuitively that this battle of central control is really key in this variation. I guess you're blockading these two pawns if you can control d5 and e4 in the Sveshnikov. And here also note that black's lost the light square bishop, which is very important often across the diagonal. He's only got the dark square one. So if you can prove this knight's better than the dark square bishop, that's interesting positioning. So I take the time to kick the rook actually back to g3 here, knowing that okay, if the rook goes here, then it's interrupting, you know, the other rook. It's coming to f7. So it goes actually to f8, knowing that this other one could join it on f2. So have I got a problem on f2? I haven't got a problem on f2 until this bishop can reroute. You can imagine, like, some, you know, for example, like this. If this bishop reroutes on f2, then I might have a problem with great piece coordination on f2. But anyway, I just castle here, knowing that the rook's handling things at the moment with f2. So it's not such a big deal. And I've got, at the moment, a good grip on e4 and d5. The knight gripping d5, the queen gripping e4. And I think I'm going to have to review this game from the start because of the issues, and I don't think anyone would mind, would they, if I review this game from the start. But for the moment, you get the idea that I'm happy to grip these two central squares. So black is actually in a difficult position already, I think. If d5, then I can take on e5. So not so simple as that. The knight coming to d5 looks like a menace. I've also got queen e4 would hit the rook. If I played queen e4, it would be hitting the rook. Okay, so my opponent plays queen e8. And I hit the rook with queen e4, which satisfies this criteria that a lot of Sicilian Sveshnikov games, you want to control d5 and e4. And I'm also blockading this pawn literally. Now this pawn coming to e4 might be a potential tactical dynamic threat of some sort if e4's ever played. I could try and give an example of that. One example. If I just go for the d6 pawn, then I'm losing control a bit of e4. I just win that pawn, but maybe e3, and maybe this pawn's a bit of a pain in the future. You never know. So keeping these pawns on the lock and key, both of them here, is a very interesting strategy. So this grip on d5 and e4, I thought it satisfies a positional kind of aspect, blockade. So with queen e4, and it also hits the rook. So now we see queen f7 protecting the rook, and now I leave this rook at home. It's doing a good job there. I just played rook a6 though to try and tie down my opponent's pieces. Rook d7, and now if you had white here, and this is addressed mostly to well, anyone able to see the board, what would you play here with white if I gave you 20 seconds starting from now? So white to play, what would you play with white in this position? Oh, we're on move 24, yeah, with rook d7, yeah. 24, rook d7. Okay, so there's one suggestion, pawn to h4. Yeah, interesting. I actually just got the queens off. I didn't want any danger with the queens on. I know it looks a bit boring to get the queens off. But white's structurally better here. So kind of simple chess might be the order of the day. Just to reduce complications, because structurally, if I can keep a blockade on these two, I'm also potentially threatening rook b6. And what would actually defend b5 here? Is it probably another stream or another broadcast? Is it, I don't believe it. Some sort of overload. Okay, so my opponent played queen takes d5, knight takes d5, and this pawn is incredibly weak, with rook b6 being threatened. Now, I guess my opponent should have tried to play rook b8 in advance of that threat. I can do a few things though. I can do this to try and get even the rooks off, and then this knight's just a little bit better than the bishop here. So actually what was played, and he's coming into a bit of time trouble, he's got to get to move 35 for the first time control. He played e4. And I just played rook b6, and I seem to be winning a pawn, no problem, with rook b6. He plays rook f5. Now rook takes b5, and I'm actually threatening knight e7 check to win the rook. And if the bishop, pardon me, well, the bishop's eyeing e7, but I am threatening that rook. I suppose rook f7 would be okay here, though. Unless h4, though, and then we're trying to knock that bishop away from e7. So if bishop here, we've still got knight e7 check to try and win this rook. And if bishop d8, then in this position, rook b8 might be annoying. If we hold this knight first, this doesn't look good. But okay, my opponent actually played king f7. Have I got two broadcasts? Oh, stop that one. So we have a difficult position here for black. And I think this pawn's now weak. So I play rook e1, and he defends that. And c4 now reinforces the knight, so I'm free to move the rook now. He tries to play an active move, rook a7, try and maybe get down here. But now knight c3, and I'm on the pawn, and I'm also threatening to take here. But funny enough, there's actually a very, very good move here for black, which I missed. And fortunately for me, my opponent missed this move. What I'll do, Burke Bob and others, sorry about this, we'll stop this after this first pass through the game, and I'll restart it just on this broadcast. And I'll try and carry on another hour from this, because I'm sorry about all these problems. But let's just get to the end of this game once, and then. So what would you say is a good move for black if I gave you 20 seconds here, starting from now? Anyone? Yes, the board's on move 31. Oh. I think I'm going to give up. There's no audio. I'm going to give up soon. On Play Chess, I can't do this. I'm sorry. The move he missed is bishop d2. I think this is quite good, because if rook takes, black actually has bishop takes c3, and both my rooks are being hit here. This is not particularly good news. This position, taking. I've lost a bit of the advantage. I've only got double pawns here, and you know, maybe king f6, and it's not brilliant. Anyway, my opponent blundered. He played e3, and of course this allows, what does it allow? So white to play here. Can you see a move for white if I give you 20 seconds? White's play. Yeah, f4. So I'm attacking these two. After rook takes, knight takes, I'm on this rook as well. So he had to resign here. Alright, so it's 9:30 now. So we've had tons of technical problems on the Play Chess server. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop and start again on Play Chess. And try again. Maybe a different game, bit of variety. Geller against Sveshnikov. Maybe a bit more luck with a different game. Okay. We're going to have a look at Geller against Sveshnikov. Hopefully, with some technical success, maybe. If we're lucky, I'm lucky. Hi there, is there audio? Okay, second game for no testing. Hi Bert Bob, audio is okay, audio is on, board is on. If I played e4 c5, do you see e4 c5? You see on e4 c5 now? Just checking. Good. Right, so this is Geller against Sveshnikov, right? And I should know the year of this, funny enough. For some reason I managed to erase the year. Great. Okay, they did play against each other. I think it... yeah. Alright, so I hope someone can find out about the year. So, knight f3, knight c6. We see the Sveshnikov being used in this game. d4, c takes, knight f6, knight c3. We see this e5 move. So Sveshnikov playing Sveshnikov. So how did this system sort of evolve the way it did? Knight db5, d6, bishop g5, a6, knight a3, b5. So I used to think this is like crazy, this knight coming here and it gets rerouted like this when this moves. It's a bit crazy. Knight d5, bishop e7, and Geller played, I mean this is the Karpov kind of Geller style. It's not playing bishop takes f6 here with the double pawns, but the alternative here is to play this knight d5. So Karpov and Geller, I think Geller was Karpov's trainer actually, and so probably recommended him more for this move, knight d5. So we see bishop e7, bishop takes, c3. So we've got this very familiar maneuver to e3. Black castles, knight c2, potentially to e3, but for the moment bishop g5. So very familiar from my game last night. So at move 12, very beaten territory, and we see this a4. But the interesting thing is Sveshnikov, and this is what one of my fellow club players was saying last night after my game, that black often just takes on a4 here. It might actually be a lesser evil move just to take on a4. So you allow this rook takes a4 and then you play a5. Does anyone see what the potential problem with this is? Because this could actually be a more active way of playing it for black. One thing which needs to be checked out maybe is b4, because we're trying to use that pin. But a lot of people they don't play b4 here. It's just I don't want to check live, but maybe I threw things out when I checked live but last time. So, but anyway, Geller played bishop c4, which seems quite logical. Okay, so rook b8. Now b3. Okay, so we have king h8. So black prepares this thematic f5. He wants to try and liberate that rook on f8. So after castles f5 and white took, bishop takes f5. So these bishops actually look quite good at the moment, complementary bishops. Queen e2, queen d7. You can see that there's a roadblock for that rook. It hasn't got free access to the a file. This pawn's playing an important role here. Knight ce3, the bishop drops to e6. Rook d1, but there is seemingly a strong reinforcement of the d5 square. Bishop d8. The bishop might be looking at going to b6 here at some point. Rook a2. Queen f7. It's nice to put pressure like that, but it's not actually doing anything at the moment. Queen d3, and now a weakness of the last move actually. Geller's move queen d3 stops IH5, and guess what? Queen h5, just going there. Queen h5. Knight f1. And as I mentioned in my game earlier, that white should be trying to control e4 and d5, and actually black in this position plays e4, and this can create dynamic play to play e4 here. So what is actually happening? Well, actually the queen can't take because of queen takes rook. So that's a bit of a pain. So black's just given himself this e5 square, potentially for the knight or some other piece. Queen c2. And now bishop h4, and the bishop's actually doing something. It's creating a weakness of some sort. White doesn't really want to play g3 here. So we see knight g3. And this is taken, bishop takes, h takes, and now the knight comes into e5, and you know this queen is just standing holding the rook, but the knight might be doing something evil here on f3 soon. So knight f4, hitting the queen, and black now plays very aggressively. Rook takes f4. Now g takes f4. Knight f3 check, trying to get a really dangerous f3 pawn, which would be like incredibly dangerous if it were not for bishop f1. This e takes bishop f1. So black first plays bishop takes c4, getting rid of the bishop, and also threatening b3. So if b takes e takes f3, we're threatening queen g4 is a menace. So white actually decides here to play queen takes e4, and he's the exchange up technically, but bishop takes b3 is now forking two rooks with the bishop. Rook b1, pinning the bishop to b8. That's unpinned with rook e8, attacking the queen. And now it gets really hair-raisingly tactical by both sides, in fact, because white plays rook takes a5 to try and deflect the queen away from the rook. So we can't take that out, we just lose that rook. So Sveshnikov is quite a good tactician as well. He plays d5, and it's supported by the bishop, of course. So there's no rook d5, we can just take with the bishop. So d5, and we get another tactical move. So blow for blow tactics here. Rook e1. So we've got a pin on that pawn. But now black plays queen g6 check, and this is really cool. This queen g6 check. If the king moves, we just take the queen. Now we've broken the pin on d5. We just take the queen. And if queen takes, then what we do is play check first, and then we take here. So we're a bishop up. So that was a really crushing sequence, and it shows you that if you lose control of e4 for one moment, you can be blown to bits. White just lost complete control of the position here. These two squares are important to have a massive grip on. By black playing e4, this whole operation to get a dangerous pawn here was put in motion. So let's just rewind this again just to see. Bishop h4 first. What did this actually do, this bishop h4? It connected the rooks for a start. It got rid of the defensive knight. So, and now this just, this is nasty stuff. Threatening knight g4, trying to mate white like this, or rook f2, is very, very dangerous without any knights there. Knight f4, we saw exchange sack, and then we saw knight f3 check. And so that's showing some of the dynamic potential in this game of the Sveshnikov, how it can be so dangerous, especially if white relinquishes control of one of these two central squares. So you've got to bear that in mind. So let's have a look at another game. Did that impress anyone, this game with Geller against Sveshnikov? Was anyone impressed? Sound lost again. It's back, is it? It's back. I have no idea what's going on PlayChat. I'm sorry, I have no idea what I'm doing wrong here to get these issues with sound or whatever. Sometimes it's okay, some weeks. Nope, it's not back. It's off. If I do setup or something. If I do stop and start. Oh man. Okay. if you press play. Have we got audio now? Or Bob? Bob, if you press play. Maybe I needed to run the setup for the microphone. We've got sound, have we? I'm learning something. You don't need to completely restart broadcasts. Maybe sometimes. Well, I hope everyone's got sound okay. Maybe that's the easier thing to do next time. Alright, have to navigate my way around here. So we're going to go on to another game. So I'm mixing chess with loads of technical issues at the same time. Great. Okay, so this, I do have a date for this game, 1988. Mikhail Ulybin against Sveshnikov in 1988. This was an interesting game, sort of. It showed he was interested in this e5 move in a more general sense. It's not a true Sveshnikov game, so Sveshnikov playing black. But I used to play this by accident on Chess World. It's not a Sveshnikov. This is like Kalashnikov territory, but it can transpose into Sveshnikov. The problem is you're supposed to put the knight on c3 with knight f6. That's an important finesse, because otherwise with e5, as this game shows, after d6, white is not obliged to play knight c3. White actually played c4, and we've got a dreaded Roxy binds now over that d5 square. Let's see the game anyway, though. It's kind of interesting. So Ulybin was 25-21 and on the FIDE scale, and Sveshnikov 25-25. So knight c3, a6, knight e3, bishop e6, bishop e2, and the knight jumps into d4 straight off the bat. Knight c2, and it takes on at e2, grabbing that light square bishop. Queen takes, knight f6. Castles, rook c8. There's pressure on c4 clearly. Protecting c4 for moments. Black castles, rook d1. So it looks like a very nice bind over that d5 square. How does black want to generate some counterplay here? Black actually played queen c7, and now after b3, b5, so that loose knight looks good. Has white gone wrong? Well, he's giving up the c file now. After knight ed5, black just plays knight takes d5, and we have knight takes d5, bishop takes d5, and white is forced to play c takes. So he's letting this infiltration on c2 happen with queen c2, and this rook's a bit of a pain again. White plays queen g4, and now Sveshnikov, it looks like a pedantic point that this queen is holding the rook. How do we get rid of this queen holding the rook here? Well, actually, first of all, this control of e4 and d5 is sort of relevant in this position. f5 undermines white's pawn chain, blows up white's pawn chain. After e takes, can you guess what black played in this position? If I give you 20 seconds starting for now, and actually this is a good highlighted threat. White might be threatening bishop h6, just to let you know, on g7. So what would you play here with black? You might want to move away from the score sheet, by the way, for these guess the moves. But on Twitch, so what would you play here if you had the black pieces? Let's flip the board actually from his perspective. So an obvious move to play is rook takes f5. So that would be an obvious move to play, because actually it looks tempting as well because you're hitting f2. But bishop h6, this is not quite a back row mate now, because we've got both rooks on f1, so there's no back row mate or anything. This wasn't played. There's a more powerful move here. I wonder if it's beyond everyone watching on Twitch. So what would you play here with black? There's a temporary advantage here. You've got that the rooks are not connected, so a subtle little temporary advantage And temporary advantages tend to disappear if you don't make use of them tactically. That's an important thing about chess. Yeah. Yeah. So the rooks are temporarily disconnected. Okay, yes. H5, it was mentioned. So we want to get a full double attack assault on F2 because the rooks are not connected, meaning the back row is actually weaker right now. So if queen takes H5, this is a disaster actually, because if rook takes F5, we want to hold on to the rook, but we get back row mated here with this fact that the rooks are not connected. There's no connection of that rook to F1. So H5 is really powerful here. So white plays queen F3, and what does black play here? What does black play in this position? If I give you 20 seconds here. You see another temporary advantage. That's one temporary advantage. Another temporary advantage. This queen is the only thing holding on to D1, actually. And the queen is not yet on D3. Can you imagine that as a temporary advantage? The queen is not yet on D3. It's on F3. How can we exploit that fact? That the queen is on F3 here, not on D3. Because if it was on D3, it would be challenging our queen. Yeah. So forget rook takes F5. We've got, if rook takes F5. No, actually, queen D3 doesn't. No, queen D3 actually holds F1 here. So this isn't a back row mate. We're holding F1. No, actually, the crushing move is actually here to play E4. So now the queen can't go here because we've got double attack. And in fact, well, he gives up. He does take on H5 when we've got the double attack. We've got everything we want out of the position. Just from that simple infiltration to C2, it just lost the game quite shortly after. But he didn't play a real Sveshnikov, and that's kind of interesting. That Sveshnikov himself was playing the move which I was trying to play the Sveshnikov as a junior, and I was playing this E5 incorrectly. This isn't Sveshnikov. It's important that knight F6 is played, so you try and force knight C3, so there isn't the Maroczy bind. But it's interesting, he had a game in this variation anyway, and he played quite well against this Maroczy bind. So interesting that Sveshnikov liked playing this kind of structure fundamentally, this D6 and E5. And that just with that infiltration to C2, it was quickly decided. So F2 is often a problem actually in the Sveshnikov anyway. It's a dark square pawn. Let's have a look at another game anyway. So Boris Spassky, I don't know what it was. I've had a look at this Moscow USSR Championship in 1973. So Fischer had just beaten Spassky in the 1972 match. And the truth is, I think they were really pissed off. The USSR, they got some of the strongest players. Every one of the strongest players was invited to play. Otherwise, they were going to lose all their privileges. The state was funding chess. Not only that, the games were not meant to be less than 30 moves. And very, very interestingly, okay, so you haven't got games much under 30 moves by draws. And very, very interestingly, tons of the games, tons of them, were Sicilian defences. I thought, what on earth is going on here? And the Sicilian defence really makes a statement in this tournament. If you have a look at the USSR Moscow Championship 1973, it's a big statement that basically this is going to be a fighting chess tournament. None of this Berlin Wall stuff, boring variations. there were tons of Sicilian defences in this tournament, and Boris Spassky did fantastically well, even though he had just lost to Fischer in 72. He did fantastically well in this tournament. And let's have a look at his game against Sveshnikov. So he was actually white against Sveshnikov. So e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes, knight f6, playing the proper Sveshnikov, none of this e5. So forcing the knight to c3, so there's no Maroczy bind. e5, knight db5, d6, bishop g5, familiar stuff. Knight comes like this, and there's two main moves. There's knight d5 or there's bishop takes f6. Now bishop takes f6 is considered the main line. Bishop takes f6 doubles the black pawns generally. Black doesn't really want to take with the queen, although I think that might have been played before knight d5. It's annoying that the queen has to go back. No, black usually takes here because there's an advantage that the bishop can fianchetto. We see knight d5. And we see f5 here, bishop d3, bishop e6, and Spassky plays what looks to be a crude sort of move, queen h5, but it is actually quite dangerous. Why not park the queen here? Normally, does it look like some sort of beginner's move to put the queen here? It's got concrete threats in this position potentially. And we'll see some of them soon. Bishop g7 looks entirely logical. White castles. h6, which gives the g5 square sometimes for the queen if it wasn't for knight c7 check. c3, castles. Knight c2. And this is what I find fascinating. My own kind of revelation, because it's a long time since I've played the Sicilian Sveshnikov. And in fact, I might go back to it because the amount of French defence games I lost last season was terrible, and I hated myself for routinely playing the French defence. I don't know, I used to like playing the Sveshnikov, but there's a subtlety here, an enormous one, in fact, because if you look at one of the modern exponents of this opening, Vladimir Kramnik, he is not tempted usually by f takes e4. Can you imagine what Vladimir Kramnik plays in this position? Isn't it natural to undouble your pawns? You've got double pawns. I think this is where routine thought has to be thrown out of the window. What does Vladimir Kramnik statistically play in this position? Does anyone know? In this sort of position, I'm not actually, you'll need to look at identical positions, but I've seen some of his games where he's been taking on d5. I was thinking, is this a big deal, this idea? Well, what he's doing is sealing the d5 square and often sacrificing f5, you know, playing for that g file. And I'm going to show you a Vladimir Kramnik game like this shortly. Now, what is the advantage of this versus what happened in this game? It seems natural for black to want to undouble the pawns, but is king's safety being compromised by undoubling the pawns? This is a very, very interesting question, because it looks also there's a temptation to gain another key tempo here by taking on e4. Bishop takes e4, you gain another tempo as well. So why wouldn't this be bad? It looks as though both bishops are ready to roll. It looks as though the centre's ready to crash through. We've got central pawn mobility. We've got the two bishops. We've got a g-file. Why isn't this bad? Why is this bad? Can you see what Boris Spassky played in this position? I think to do with weakness of the last move as well. Okay, weakness of the last move might help you, guide you to a move here which Boris Spassky played. So if you were playing white, I'll give you 20 seconds here. What would you play with white? f4, people say, what is this f4 about? Aren't you just losing a piece? Sorry, f4, we just take this bishop, don't we? What is this about? Burke Bob and all on Play Chess, please hide the game score for these Guess the Moves. Please hide the game score. Okay. You can go onto a different tab. So no one's finding it on Twitch. It looks like a glamorous position for black. You're going to let black have an utterly glamorous position if you don't find the right move here. Black's got the bishop here, the G file, central pawn mobility. What do you play here? Okay. I'm going to make it a little bit easier, right? I'm going to make it easier. The concept of weakness of the last move, I think, is one of the most beautiful concepts I've gone on and on about on the channel. Let's just rewind carefully, right? We've just played f7 to f5. Okay. What is a weakness of f7 to f5? A weakness of the last move. What is a weakness of the last move? It weakens g6. Yes, amazing God. It weakens g6. And what else does it weaken? What else does it weaken? Yes, it weakens the bishop on e6. Now, can you use that fact to create a forcing move, which is useful for white? It's not queen g6. It's not queen g6. Yes, Spassky played knight f4. Let's carry on too much on this. It actually hits the bishop. It's hitting the knight, and knight's hitting. We've got a double attack, guys. We've got a double attack out of nowhere from this f5, this weakness in the last move. We've got a double attack opportunity on these two pieces. And that's quite horrible, actually, because if e takes, we get a horrible structure with these double pawns. And we can have a backward pawn here. And white will be doing fine. So Sveshnikov may be a bit annoyed, retreats his bishop now from its more ideal square to d7, and this doesn't look good now. Bishop d5 check. Now if king h8, we lose the exchange, so knight g6 check. So king h7 was played, queen g6 check, king h8. Now knight h5 threatens mate in 1, queen comes to protect. And now Spassky plays another forcing move, knight b4. So he's on that horrible pin. For some reason, here, Black played knight takes b4. I'm just wondering about rook c8. Is there something wrong with rook c8? It seems the a6 pawn's hanging, but apart from that, is there anything else wrong with rook c8 in this position? Does anyone see a problem with rook c8 here, apart from knight takes a6? Oh yes, we can take here, couldn't we? And then queen takes d6. That's a problem. So anyway, Black decided to play knight takes b4. so Spassky wins the exchange. Rook g8. Which doesn't really threaten much. White just plays c takes b4. And that's the end of the game, actually. Black resigned. So if he takes, I guess we can just well, with the exchange up, we can also win this other pawn as well. So it's not too pleasant for black. So from a seemingly beautiful position, Sveshnikov in his own opening just got smashed when he played a bit too casually, maybe to a weakness of the last move. In his own pet opening, he got completely smashed, playing what seemed to be a very attractive move, undouble pawns, try for pawn mobility. It looks, with tempo, if anything else, white's losing. You know, bishop f3, e4, white's lost. You know, d5, what do we do? Knight f4, maybe, okay, maybe not totally lost. Bishop f7, we hit the queen, maybe lost actually. So that's no good. Same here, bishop d3, e4. There weren't too many alternatives because we've always got this bishop f7. So that was interesting. That knight f4 is a bit of a star move of the game. But I also did happen to notice that this is not the way Vladimir Kramnik is playing the position, with this seemingly natural f takes e4 and f5. And I want to show you that now. So Peter Liko against Vladimir Kramnik in 2004. e4, c5. Knight f3, knight c6, d4 takes, knight d4. We have this Sveshnikov start to it. Now bishop takes f6 is chosen. So the major choice here is knight d5 or bishop f6. Bishop f6 is chosen. G takes, knight d5, f5, bishop d3, bishop e6. After castles, Kramnik, he doesn't mind the double pawns. He just takes on d5 immediately here, actually. So e takes d5, knight e7. So one must ask, is this somehow more solid for black, this position? The queen actually goes to h5. And black gets in e4. That's one big advantage already, because we can extend the scope of this bishop along this diagonal. Bishop e2, bishop g7. There's some perks to playing it like this. There aren't too many problems. It's only this knight that's around. The other knight's gone. Just a pawn there on that d5. So c3, rook c8. Knight c2, but this knight's coming round for that f5 pawn. Rook c5, but d5 can be counter-attacked. Knight e3. The knight's holding here as well as attacking here. f4, inviting knight f5. But threatening knight takes g7 check. So black castles. And again, you know, rook takes d5. Sorry. In this position, a4 is played. If rook takes d5, we just take on e7, and then we take the rook. That's check. We just take the rook. So that's not on. So a4, knight takes f5 is played. Queen takes. Queen e7. So what we've got out of this is actually quite a nice bishop on g7, and none of the white knights are around, which is good. A takes, queen takes f4, rook takes d5. So we've potentially got some central pawn mobility. Rook f d1, rook e5, queen e3. But what we also have got is this g file. If we can work this g file, it would be interesting. f5, queen b6, targeting d6. It seems to be quite dangerous. f4, doesn't matter about a pawn on the queen side, who cares? We're going to smash down white's king here with f3. So this is a much more pleasant situation from the way Sveshnikov played it, obviously, against Spassky. It seems a much more successful approach so far. Queen takes d6. Queen g5. We're coming in for the kill here with f3. So white plays f3. So stop that. e3. Rook a7. King h8. We're going to use this g file. It's going to be quite dangerous. Queen d7. Rook g8. We're lining up the troops here on g2. Queen h3 protecting g2 and also keeping an eye on h7 here. Queen g6. Queen g6 looks as though it facilitates rook h5, so we can kick the queen from there, move this bishop on g2. Rook a d7. Rook h5. And white doesn't want to move the queen here. And where does he move the queen? The queen's got no squares anyway. I mean, I guess he could go to g4, but that doesn't look too appetizing. Because rook g5, maybe we can start trebling, you know, rook g5, and then we can start, you know, we've got this and this. It's starting to look a bit horrible. So, no, actually, white played rook 7 to d6. And I'm finding this quite incredible when I saw it earlier, because, okay, question here, why not bishop d3 from, well, okay, why not 32 bishop d3? Hold on, okay, so on, you're saying on move 32, instead of rook a d7, you're saying bishop d3. Okay, hold on a sec. Bishop d3 here. I can immediately see e2 might be useful because we're hitting that rook threatening to queen. This could be a big issue with bishop d3, this e2 move, because then we're going to take if the rook moves. We just take on d3. I don't know what white's answer is to e2. Does that answer the question, Bob? Are you convinced e2 is a bit of a refutation of that? Because we're going to queen with check. We're going to take this guy. It's with check. That's going to be mate. Yeah. Okay, so rook a d7 was played. Rook h5. But this is astonishing what's going to happen now. Rook 7 to d6. No, I'm going to be really cruel. Sorry. I can't resist this. I can't resist this, really. I can't. Oh man, this is just too good. What does black play here? So you can't look up this game, people on Twitch. What did black play here? So black to play, right? What would you play here with black if I gave you 20 seconds starting from now? I'm sorry, this is really, really cruel. This is probably... it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So you think just... Okay, alright. I'll try and make it easier, right? This initially, this might not look too good to do this bishop f6, okay? Now, why would initially this might not look like a good idea to play bishop f6? You're going into a pin. What can white apparently play in this position to win material? So white to play here, what can white apparently play, which was played, to win material? Oh dear, oh dear. So what? Okay, so on play chess, what can white play here to win material? Okay, no, you've got. Yeah. Okay, rook takes f6. Apparently wins material, and that's what Peter Lico played. So he's a 27-22 player. Kramnik's 27-77. This is like mega tactics, right? So if queen takes f6, that's winning for white with queen takes h5. But black has a move here, a different move. What can black play in this position? Okay, as been pointed out, I think I might as well. Black played the astonishing queen c2. So he's a whole bishop down. Not just a whole bishop down. He's offering his rook as well. Take my rook as well. Be a bishop and rook up. Temporarily, at least. So white takes the rook. So he's a rook and bishop up. But the last e2 is now threatening. d1 and the old queen takes g2. Mating. So big problems here. White tries g4. But now just check, and white has to resign. If you might ask, well, queen h3, we just take the rook. We're a rook. We're just winning this. It's mate. So g4 was one of the only moves. Check and white resign, because if king h1, we just take here, and then we can either take here or just take the rook. It's end of game. Maybe just taking here, and then we can win the queen, and then we can take the rook. So there was an interesting aspect of this game, if you compare it to the Sveshnikov game against Boris Spassky, that Kramnik was quite content just for bishop takes d5 here. So he leaves his double pawns, none of this undoubling of the pawns, he leaves his double pawns, and the perks of this, if we just try and understand this, is he's just going for the g file and the dark square bishop, and this e4 is quite handy. So that was quite interesting way of playing the Sicilian Sveshnikov compared to Sveshnikov himself. But Sveshnikov was the one evolving the system. Kramnik doesn't play it that much at the moment. I believe he just plays the Berlin defense. And so I started late on Play Chess. Sorry, I didn't start late. It's virtually late because of all the technical issues. We've got no sound. Oh man, are you kidding me? No sound. Let me see if I can just restore sound. Okay. If I do stop. Oh, my computer's going to crash now. Great. The whole thing stopped working. Oh. Okay. Okay. Those on Twitch, I'm sorry about this. I hope you got something from this week. I'm not sure I'm going to upload this on YouTube. It'll be on Twitch for a while until they remove the files. So I'll see you next week. Thanks very much. Hope you got something from it.